Hey, so let me show you my new repo, my new model, which is TopBox, page rank for fighters, for boxers. Let's forget about beating over taxi drivers, and let's figure out who is the toughest fighter because he beats the toughest guys. It's I've been trying to work into this project for some time ago, actually several years. And the main blocker was, aside of not having previously a strong artificial intelligence agents, it was actually the lack of the data. There was not a data set in which we have a boxer beat boxer on a particular date. We had I found some data sets in Kaggle which were more related to stats of the boxers, attributes of the boxers, and who beat who, but not the actual ID, not the actual who beat who. It was just the rates and height, weight, and some kind of stats, and try to predict boxing outcome, the fight, the match outcome, based on those features. But I had not that data set. So a blocker of mine was always try to build the crawler and collect the data. That was not straightforward to me, and is not straightforward to anyone trying to go through boxing records page to Livebox site. There are some sites for collecting boxing stats, but some of them are priority. They have API costs, and there's no clean or free way to do it. But after trying that, I found that it was very easy to do it in Wikipedia, which I would expect. But it seems pretty structured in Wikipedia. It felt like probably the best way to do it. And actually, I was reasonably comfortable with the solution that I had with that. Once that I have the data set, doing the PageRank algorithm on top of that, it seemed pretty trivial at first glance. But not spoilers, but I found that the problem was trickier than I was expecting to before. And I found that fighting this problem itself reveals some insights and learnings and components of the switch science that I had not been able to appreciate for during long years of being an avid boxing fan. I cannot help but advance some of them, and weight division, pound for pound rankings are starting to look to me something more like negative information, meaning that it's not fundamental that Canelo is middleweight. Not it's not a boxer attribute, because it depends on Canelo in which fight, in which year, because boxers grow up heavier as they progress towards the end of their career, because they cannot rehydrate. It gets more difficult to make the weight, to get lighter, as as I myself have experienced first person as I grow older. But well, I will have to mention and to provide a special some kind of acknowledgement to to one of my former colleagues. Well, actually, I was working for him. It was Dimitri Sakovic, and I had very interesting conversations with him in LinkedIn about the results and the disappointments of providing this kind of ranking. So let me go and try to show you the repo itself. This is the repo that is publicly available, and it's the same that I have. There's no anything that I keep in for me. This is my ML sandbox, where it's kind of a mono repo where I display most of my personal side projects. And finally, I have TopBoxer, the boxing ranking pipeline. So what it states that it does. This is the readme. This states that it makes a dataset out of scrapping Wikipedia for the boxers, and if I wear my way there, and if we go to Wikipedia, we can see here Money Boy and his beautiful face, and we can see his professional record. And where we get is something very similar to, well, these are the kind of tables that we are picking, and this is he beat this opponent on this date, this result. Yeah, we know it has all green. Yeah. So this is the rip. I try to make a very easy to use by somebody else or me in a different machine. Yeah. I will say, well, I provide two rankings. I will go later on into this because it's one of the key things that I discover and that I get deeper insights while working in this. There are two ways of looking at this. For people getting annoyed or pissed off, this is the top one boxer. Not all the time, but I cut it somehow after before 1950, nothing previous to that, and it's up to date. And this is Canelo Alvarez, top one. Marvin Hagler, Gervonta Davis. Okay, and for recent lens, let me go into this afterwards. We have Dimitri Bivol and Artur Beterbiev. And these two little guys as well, Gervonta Davis and Lamont Rhodes. And Canelo goes a little bit down. Terence Crawford makes it to the top 10 if we go through recent lens. So let me go after that and think about this later on. Very easy thing. Crawl the Wikipedia, produce a dataset, store it locally, run pagerank on top of a graph built on this dataset, and provide the ranking. And this is all we do, nothing else. Let me go into the code where we can see and navigate it better. Okay, so this is the same local repo that we have there. This is the structure. This is how you can run it locally, cloning the thing and so on. And this is the main entry point. It gives you some guidelines. As UV, I cannot, I cannot think how to those painful years of handling Python projects and dependencies with something else than UV. I cannot imagine. I cannot comprehend how we went for that many years with solutions that worse than anything other than UV Sync or than UV from Astral. I have some code style guidelines. Let me go through that afterwards. But I will show you the main entry point in order to understand the structure of the repo that we have. And this is the main command which runs the whole thing. Okay, this is this run TopBox, and is here in the source. This is the main entry point, and as you can see, we can run this from here, from command line, whatever you like. Let me do it from command line. It's this thing, okay, and it's on. Good. It's a small data. One of the things is that the data is previously crawled. If the data is previously crawled and we have the matches data set, we do not go through it. And once simply loading then and running the pagerank algorithm on top of that, it's lightning fast. It's just a few rows with less than 10,000 rows. So it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty lightweight. So if we want to see what is this, it takes the file name, it creates the data set. If it is this is the object of the data set, try to find it. If it is loaded and it is stored previously, it goes ahead. Otherwise, it creates it from matches, and here it needs to crawl the whole thing. Then we go into that, and then we do the pagerank box. And at the current state, we have two variants, two flavors of pagerank box. One is consolidated, and one is not consolidated or recent. Yeah. So let me go through the data set. I try to follow, as I mentioned in the guidelines, that I follow in the code guidelines, that I follow a very lean and clean code based on mostly in object orientation, because not because of code efficiency, because of code complexity. So it's very easy to get functional understanding of the top level structure of the project if you keep discipline in developing everything around case classes, about objects, about Python native classes, because it forces you to structure properly from a point of view or a perspective that is not only digestible to the Python interpreter, but to you while developing. So it forces you to fight aggressively, cognitive depth, knowledge depth, and code complexity, which I found it critical because, as I mentioned earlier in the intro, I did heavy use of agentic assistance for coding assistance. I use heavily Grok Code Fast, and mainly through open code agentic tool, and as well using Goose AI from Block as an agentic tools, and I use a lot of the simple chat interfaces by Grok, because, by the way, it had available at that time the Grok 4.20 with this recent development, which is at this point is 2026 and February, March. And it is available through the chat interface, but not through the API in order to connect it and to consume it, the outputs and the inputs through these agentic tools like open code or Goose AI for Block. So if you start by coding and doing crazy things, many people have talked about this before and deeper than me. It accumulates code complexity and knowledge depth very quickly, and it compounds very quickly, and in a short period of time, you are out of the mind frame of the code structure, and nobody can handle that. So these standards, they help during the development, during the reading, at maintainment, and especially with agentic tools, it's very useful for not accumulating knowledge depth. I use a lot of PyTest test-driven development. Before agentic tools, it was very good, and probably it's even more important now, because then you can go to the test and understand very easily what is all about this, and check the main functionality, and it's more critical than ever with agentic tools to be able to make sure that during evolution of the code base you do not break previous functionality, and is probably the best way of understanding what are not only the high level structure and functionality of the code, but as well the more deeper grain level of the functions and the functionalities of the code itself. And yeah, well, it just passes the kind of I have a folder for CI, for continuous integration, for roughing, and for tests, and so it's, if you are keep attention into doing very lightweight tests, it makes something frictionless that allows you to do it very iteratively, very integrated into development cycle. And right now probably it takes longer to get a prompt from a provider of artificial intelligence for frontier models and cloud. Probably it takes longer than running the test, which is what it should be, because they're not integration tests, they simply check the functionality at a deeper level and a local level. So good for not breaking compatibility and functionality while developing. And as I mentioned, I use Wikipedia, Box Live. I went through boxing records page, which was not very, it had experiences with Cloudflare. They have decided not to allow to crawl the page, and they take measures or countermeasures against crawling. Not in Box Live, but we'll talk about the data itself later on. So this is the data set, and this is the top level functionality. We can see that data set, it does very obvious things, which create from matches and save and loads. Yeah, it's nothing aside from that. What happens is that if it is when we go, if this comes from somewhere else, which is get matches, which is this comes from the crawler wiki. So in the case that we have not seen this parquet with the store matches of the fights, and let me one thing to show is that we have a domain. Let me bring once more a quote from Linus Torvalds, which is, I couldn't figure out remind from the top of my head the quote, but the thing is that more than functionality, you need to think about entities when developing code. So this is very useful, and it's crystallizing the domain-driven design paradigm of developing code, which is define the entities, and you go to the domain and you see we're talking about matches, and once that you define the entities, the relationships between them and the functionalities to apply the scripts and converting from one entity to the other and to relate them, it gets they're evident, and they're very easy to understand, and they arise naturally from the relationships and the functionalities arise naturally out of the entities if they're correctly and clearly and smartly defined. And we are talking about matches, which is something between a boxer A and a boxer B. And the important thing is if there is a win for the first one, and could be true or false or even known, this is the placeholder for the draw, which it revealed as a very important component of the data after the first simple iteration. But I found that it created much meaningful results if we consider matches as obviously, but I did not do that in first place in the first version. And there's a date because we can filter out and make things with dates and deduplicate accordingly if we want to, because it works as a primary key, because we could swap the boxer A and B depending on where are we crawling from, and it's a very useful way of deduplicating things. And if you keep this conceptually clear and clean and minimal, but no shorter than needed, then the rest of the relationships become very easy to do. And we will take a look at not only through the crawler wiki, but as well in how we build the graph, which is based on matches. And yeah, where top level, what we can see is this. We have a crawler wiki and kind of a script that runs it all. And this is what we do is we start from a fighter seed, which is a set of boxers that we want to be present and we want to parse it, and we get the fight table that we saw before, which is pretty standard across Wikipedia pages for boxers, and we start the matches and we make the crawler roll, and it is somehow iterating through the list of fighters, which is this in this place. It's fighter seed, and we can see this. This is the fighter seed. So we have the names and we have the links for them. There are like a handful of them. This is created. I didn't do this almost 500 boxes by hand. I was able to compile it using the Grok and other tools, and it goes most of them. There are some links which are not they're returning error, they're not correctly, or we need to fix it with boxers and things like that in order to distinguish and differentiate it between for instance, for Manny Pacquiao, it has Manny Pacquiao and Manny Pacquiao the boxer, because now Manny Pacquiao is it's a politician in the Philippines, and it has separate pages, and we have a boxing career for him, and we have the general one, and things like that. Okay, and especially nasty things with Latin people, with have tildes and things like that, which spoil it all, but we can go mostly through it gracefully. Okay, so we go back and we crawl if we need it. We construct the data set. We get the data for the matches, and then we go to the pagerank. Now this starts to look ugly to me because it's duplicated code, and probably it makes sense to place it into a function or something like that in order to, it's source of we can maybe do typos with these names and recycle here and spoil the thing, the whole thing, because we do not use their proper var name, and I don't like it. So we should be doing the duplication of this code for maintainability, for elegancy, and to prevent bugs. So let's go to the pagerank box and let's close the rest of the things. And here we can see which page box is. It tries to normalize names in order to make sure that it happens the same through it is the same name through any kind of table that we can crawl. And we do a canonical pair at the duplication, and then build the graph and compute the pagerank. Okay, so let's try to build how we build the graph. And we have the data frame, and there is some weighting of the edges. We normalize the names for them and apply some weighting in case that this is the way we distinguish draws or ties, and we have a draw share, so we split half of the points for each of the boxers when they get to a draw in a fight. But there is, let me see, the weighting of the edges, and there is as well, aside of the splitting the share, we have this time component. Okay, it's basically an exponential time decay thing. We can see that we treat it differently if it is consolidated, the time of pagerank algorithm that we're running, and we invert it. So we have exponential time decay or exponential time increasing, okay, with time. Yep, and we have this kind of weighting. Then let me go with this afterward when we go and understand and analyze the results. And so we get the edges and just simply get from this network X implementation, the pagerank implementation with the tolerance and the alpha, like for accounting for the spider traps and being able to teleport with a certain probability, which is by default is 0.85, just like with Google results, that it takes the graph of the links between web pages and websites, and we compute the relevance of a website because it's referenced for many other pages, and it kinds of bootstrap itself by saying, okay, this is the most important place because it's the place more referenced by some other sites. We do the same for boxers. If a boxer gets victories for many other boxers, this is good for the centrality, for it gets a high scoring, and especially if those other places where if these other nodes on the graph are very strong as well, they represents a greater improvement of the scoring of the top one. Okay, so it's not the same beating a nobody than beating a boxer who has beat many strong fighters itself. So that here's when we get the concept of transitive victory, because maybe it happened with one of the boxer. I'm not sure if I remember properly, but it was could be Dimitri Bivol, that it had transitive victory over Holyfield, because they have not have a match or a fight never before, but Dimitri Bivol had won a victory over a boxer who had beaten before Holyfield. Because Holyfield is a very strong node, it's a very tough fighter with a very strong centrality in this kind of weighting of the boxers. It gets transitive score accounting into Bivol itself. So it's the concept of transitive victories that we not get when we have ratio of victories or any other kind of ranking algorithm who takes only the count of the victories and the losses and the ratios between them, but not which are who are the victories over on. So it treats any other algorithm trying to run this card relying only on the counts of the victories and not on the victories over and not the person who the victory is over. It's flow to be blind to this component, which is not the same a victory over Holyfield than over a nobody. And it shouldn't be accounted in the same way. And this is what Google made an imperium on top of that, and this kind of fair comparison between nodes in a graph. Boxing matches and boxers are simply nodes and edges of a graph as many other pieces of data that we can frame as an adjacency matrix and a graph and compute these kind of things. Okay. Well, I had the implementation. I won't go over the implementations of this. One of the things is of the concepts here is the canonical pair. If we can find the match between two fighters in the boxing records of either of them, we should be very careful with double accounting here, and we try to do the canonical pair. So it's we fix the names and we see if and we return the order name. We simply rely on lexicographical order in order to duplicate the pairs of the boxers who take part in the match. And based on that, we drop duplicates. And this is one of the things that I mentioned before about the primary key of date. And instead of doing some nasty logic in there, because boxers could have different matches, different fights at different points of the time, like trilogies and things like that. And that's not a duplicate fight. It's just a fight between the two same boxers in different dates. And having that in the data model, in the case class for what is the record that we are handling, which is not only a boxer and a result, but a date for that fight, it's now everything and the relations and the way to treat the entities, it arises naturally from the definition of the object. And that's one of the key things that I want always to mention about the domain-driven design and trying to think about entities and then relationships and operations based on those entity definitions. So, well, probably I should have started and to display the first thing, the output, but I'm going to do this chronological or operation sorting and show the output only at the end when we get this pagerank and we do the compute, and this data frame we keep it as a CSV in this folder. Okay, and we have let's go to consolidated, and here we have the thing. Okay, this score is the pagerank, and we have the boxer, the records here and this output are boxers, not fights. It's grouped by boxer. This is the key, and the score this is the page rank. The greater it is, the better the top rank, the boxer it is. Yeah, this is TopBox. Then we can discuss about this. Okay, is Canelo Alvarez better than Muhammad Ali? It's difficult to think. It's difficult to state that. But, well, I have some comments in the README about this. But this is where the key insight is that there is no ground truth. We cannot say that. We cannot fall into the nihilism that it's pointless to try to get out something about this because there's no ground truth. Nobody has the final voice on who is better than who, but we can have ways of sorting them that we are comfortable and they are justifiable. Well, Muhammad Ali, his charisma, his style is unforgettable. He did some things that transcend boxing. His legacy goes beyond boxing. And when we go to curated list of boxing rankings all-time greatest, the GOATs, it's difficult to remove the bias of all these things that Ali did that transcended boxing. Focus only on which fighters he beat. And, well, he was not able to beat Fraser. Not, well, I think they had like a couple of fights and loss for Ali and a draw or a victory of Fraser. It had many defeats. It had several defeats. And let's discount as well the thing that probably he spent his prime years in jail. So if we look at the career of Canelo Alvarez, he started as a very young fighter, into his professional career. If I'm right, he started with when he was 15 years old as a pro fighter, and he had a history of facing very tough opposition, not discounting, not rejecting anyone. He beat Kovalev. He fight Bivol, even losing against him. He fought very big guys. These big guys, we need to accept the official results, even if it is contested by fans. Is that he beat Triple G? He beat Golovkin. He had a draw and a victory over him. He has transitive victories over many people by beating Golovkin, many other fighters. And it's even let me go through that before. But Hagler, it was probably not the best of the Fantastic Four in the 80s, as commonly as common consensus, and it many times falls behind Sugar Ray Leonard, because Sugar had a victory over him, even if it is a contested victory, but it has a victory, and so PageRank algorithm is going to take into account. But if you look at Marvin Hagler, the career, the dominance that he had over the middleweight division for long years, beating everyone, beating not only nobodies, but beating Hagler, beating Tommy Hearns. he beat everyone probably aside of Ray Leonard. Um, it's impressive. And Gervonta Davis is a rising star, but if you look at him, he has almost perfect record, and he's fighting against real boxers. And Dimitri Bivol, and let me go through it with the recent boxing. But look at Roman Gonzalez, Chocolatito, which is probably too tiny to be appreciated by most casual fans, but he had a huge amount of victories over very strong contenders, very strong contenders. And Roberto Duran, it happened the same as Marvin Hagler, and he had probably an even longer career. And Lennox Lewis, who is here at the top, if we consider the heavyweight division, is the top one, even ahead of Muhammad Ali or Klitschko or as well. There was Usyk, Alexander Usyk. No Tyson Furies, nor anything. Okay, this is consolidated. And let me first navigate here one of the questions about the weight class. Weight class is not an attribute, is not an static attribute of the fighters. So when we do pound for pound rankings, we could do pound for pound if the key is the fight, but not the boxer, because the boxer has different weights at different stages of his careers and through fights. So it's not an static attribute. Canelo is a very good example about this. What division is Canelo? Which division is he? Depends. Depends on if he was 20 years old or when now that he is about 30. It's a different fighter. It's a different weight division. It depends on the rehydration that it goes through, because even the weight and the specific weight, it's at a very specific hour before the fight. And it's not a static attribute the way that we want to think about that. And it's obvious that Canelo Alvarez is smaller than Lennox Lewis, but how small? Or is he smaller than Terence Crawford? At what year and at what and how many hours before the fight? It's a dynamic attribute. I start to be convinced that this weight class and pound for pound, it's negative information, because there is something now there, but to compare the size of the fighter, but the weight class is not is not truth. It is the way we interpret it as an static attribute, and it's not the right. If we introduce this data into the model, into the logic and the criteria for the ranking, we introduce a field that it's not the way we assume it is as a static. And because of that, it introduces an information that is not helpful but detrimental of the creation of the ranking, and the way then we can justify that based on strong assumptions, based on solid assumptions that we take it as a static and boxer attribute, but it is not, as we can demonstrate. So the better way to address that is simply ignore it and do not introduce this negative component into our system, into our ranking criteria, because it adds negative information if we interpret it as a static attribute. What PageRank approach adds for this is that it, it constructs this size component implicitly bottom up, because Canelo Alvarez will never had a fight against Tyson Fury. It's like a it's like a Lego against an action man. It looks from different games. But maybe Canelo takes a victory or a fight against an Artur Beterbiev. And Artur Beterbiev is light heavyweight, and Canelo Alvarez has taken fights with welterweights like Mayweather Jr. Okay, so which division is Canelo having fights against lightweights and welterweights? It's negative information if we encode it in our criteria as a static attribute for the boxer. And the best way that I have seen so far, the most reasonable to me and defendable, is try to do this bottom-up approach in order to not to introduce false information. Other side of the of this algorithm. I had this conversation in LinkedIn with Dmitry Sakovic. Sorry if I said correctly his name. Former colleague of me. Well, not a colleague, but he was. I was reporting to him actually, and it seems to be a boxing fan as well, and discuss the results that I have been sharing during the development of this ranking algorithm. Thanks to the conversation that I had with him, I realized that it's not the same for Dmitry Bivol as for Klitschko, and in a very fundamental component, that Klitschko is retired, but Dmitry Bivol is still in his prime. That means that the data is censored, because we do not we do not have the ending of the career for Bivol, and it's not part of the data set, and it's not materialized data, the post-prime years and fights results for Dmitry Bivol, which, if we look into the recent variant of this algorithm, where we account for probably the best way to frame it is that the switch science have been evolved through time, and is probably if we have a fight between a modern fighter and a fighter in the 1950s, based on nutrition, on knowledge, on techniques, on training camps, on the density of the fights, the frequency the fighters have, the length of the fights, then years ago going to 15 rounds, it is not comparable. And in order to discount the progression of the boxing technique and performance overall through time, which my colleague Dima Sakovic mentioned, I realized that it was making sense to do this time weighting decay, because it's more valuable a victory in the recent times, because the boxing is a much more difficult sport, because better competition, because the evolution of the sport itself. And then at the same time I realized, okay, but Bivol has not faced his decline years, his post-prime career, and that is unfair. So recent fighters should are promoted higher in this ranking because the sunset years for them had not been yet materialized, and the data is censored. So I thought that if we look now at this consolidated thing, and we look into this, is that for the weighting based on time and how many years ago that fight has been happened, it makes sense both applying a time decay weighting than a time increase weighting. So we shouldn't account that much an edge or a fight between two fighters recently, because it's more likely that they are in their prime or previous their prime, and that makes some fair comparison about some other fights that happened years ago, where there on average a greater share of fights between post-prime fighters. So which one we take, which is the fair one, which is the right choice and the closer to the truth? So I don't know. Consolidation makes sense, but maybe you want to take into account the progression of the boxing science itself and say that, okay, these victories for Bivol are stronger, and if today Bivol face Vladimir Klitschko, probably he's going to beat him, even if they're closer in the previous ranking. Okay, because now the gap has widened, because Dmitry Bivol is more advanced, because it's more modern, and it uses more tools for training and nutrition and so on. I don't know which one is true. Both are true. Both are justifiable. So I decided to keep the two of them. Once again, the main truth is, I try to explain it here. This necessary asymmetry and in the censoring of the data are not being. We will never have a complete data set as long as boxing keeps on adding new fighters and new boxing matches, because even if the boxer is retired, the scoring of the fighters that he beat or he fight against are going to be adjusted because it's a graph, so everything is connected to everyone. So if we add a new fight, only an extra fight to the data set, the weights for all of the fighters previously, they're going to change, and they're going to converge into a different PageRank solution, because it takes into account the transitive victories, unlimited number of steps. So even if it is a fighter it is several fighters in between, one winning over the others, it affects all of them. The transitivity of the victories, it percolates through the whole graph. So it's not going to be ever static as we keep on adding fights. So there is no clear cut. So you can say, okay, let's take only boxers who had retired, but they're going to be fighting against some other boxers that had not retired yet, and there's no clear cut where to limit the graph of the matches for it to have it static and mature enough. It's not a clear cut. So it depends on what you want to consider. And once a good way of framing this deep inside of there is no ground truth is that the map is not the territory. So we can build several models in order to look into several components of the problem. And that falls down to the thing that I commented at the beginning into the introduction, that for me, watching fights and being an avid boxing fan for long years, and starting to dive into these details from a more formal with the hands dirty on the problem itself, and try to run into these contradictions, helped me to profound into the way I understand and appreciate boxing. And it's not a clear truth. It's just a better iterative understanding of the problem and about the data and the truth behind it. So at some point I had to cut the development of this, but probably is not yet finished. We could try to think about. I did some tests on curating the seed. As I mentioned, I simply asked Rock to get me a list of with this format for the for the boxers on their Wikipedia pages. I could create this better. As I mentioned, in the README, it's not fully updated, but it reveals the thing that the amount of boxers that we have in the final data set, it's way more extends that we have in the seed. That is because I call it a seed. It's just a seed, and we expand, and we have boxers out of the seeds because there are many fighters for these base boxers, and the seed gets expanded into. I don't remind if it is. Well, I can see the length of the ranking, and we have at least 5,000 boxers out of a seed of probably less than 500. So it gets wider. We could have a better, more dense way of creating the matches between them, because maybe we have some boxers who have not been fully added the whole set of their fighters that experience through their careers. And yeah, but probably is the best way to do it. As well, I try to cut somewhere around 150 for the date, and we could think about different criteria for cutting the starting point. We can try to go back and look for how big was Sugar Ray Robinson, but it was I wanted to keep it the problem restricted and constrained to a reasonable amount of data and problem dimension that I could handle for more or less solidly, and that it will be difficult for sure. Probably I will learn something else, and my understanding of the boxing and the rankings will get deeper if I do that. But well, it's never ending, and you need to cut at some point, and this is the main place where I have it now. Let me go just and probably one last thing, which is the historical development of the problem. So this is the history of the code development. Let me see where it starts. It should be somewhere further around. No, this is where I started to work in this, and this is okay. Agents MD. A lot of coding agents. As I mentioned briefly at the intro, I was been using Grok is the one who works better for me because of my way of working, and I feel very comfortable with that. I tried Sonnet, even 4.6. I didn't get the full use that many people are reporting, maybe because of my style, maybe because I have not gone through it deeply. But Grok is the top one for me, and especially Grok 4.20. It's amazing. Sadly, it's not available through the API yet. Reportedly, it should be anytime soon. This is March 2026. But Grok Code Fast 4.1 is just amazing to me. In terms of cost, it's less than one euro of cost per. Yeah, it's less than €1 to build this with agents with Grok Fast code. I tried to do a local setup with a modern computer and a NVIDIA GPU card, 5060 with 16 gigabytes for memory. It costs more than €2,000 and it's not even close to the performance that I get with Grok. It's interesting if you do some other kind of work, or in the long run for paying off the local setup, and as well the component of sovereignty and privacy, and we should be able to not to rely on this very narrow set of providers, and we should be able to do it locally. But it's not cheap, and it's not easy to do it. So in terms of model providers, and I use very much agentic tools. The one that I am very comfortable with is OpenCode. I tried Cloud Code, and this is very opinionated. I like very much OpenCode, and I feel very comfortable with that, and it's very easy to go back and forth switching models, and you are not strongly attached to any provider. So I use as well a lot of Goose AI, and it's like wider for, but mostly OpenCode simply works out of the box for this kind of small repo work. And I created most of it. The crawler initially was reading from boxing records, this page, which is the most comprehensive provider of data that we have. But even if being the most comprehensive is the least usable, because it's not meant to be freely available, and I found no reasonable subscriptions programs to get the API or anything like that. So I tried to circumvent it with Playwright, and it was simply not possible. Okay, I was going to see initially I tried to. No, this is not what I was meant to show, and no, this is not. Initially, I was very strongly trying to go through a very comprehensive configuration in order to unload some of the cognitive load from the case classes implemented it, and rely on the configurations. As we will see through the development, I move away from that approach. I've done it several times before in some other projects, try to place everything clearly in the configuration, do a hierarchical configuration, and most of the times I like to go into the opposite direction, which is pagerank. Each of the classes has their own parameters, and it keeps things with the parameters should, the declaration of parameters and control of the parameters should be close to the usage instead of far away from them, in order to keep modularity and be able to locally comprehend the code. And only the common things, which almost never are configurations but are constants, we put it in a static place, like files and paths, because this is static, and this goes across different classes. So this is a shared attribute, and it's not meant configure and move locally, but only globally. So it makes sense for me to have it a global configuration with the most static things that are shared across objects and modules and components of the system. And that is what finally works better for me, and I think it's a better solution. Okay, what else? Let me see, all tabs. Okay, so the crawler started there, and we have a very simple page rank, which it was not even object oriented. It was simply a function, which I do not think it's correct, because now it's not even here. The graph building and how the logic for building the graph out of the matches is not here, and it's somewhere else. It's in the data set, and the logic is scattered and it's not unified. Okay, so then this is the next thing that I try to do to move the crawler away. Try to make a more sophisticated crawler, trying to trying to fake that I was a human, somehow using a fake or an automatic browser. And no, it was not easy enough. And the thing about the agentic tooling is that I had no the technical knowledge. I could get it maybe after a long time diving into it, but I simply do it with the agents, with the artificial intelligence tools, and then say do it in Scrapper, do it crawler, and it does it. And it will take a long time for me to do this. Probably I was not going to be able to do it as deep as it goes. So it's amazing that some years ago I never knew how to do this crawling, how to collect and gather this data set, and now it's very easy to crawl and move from a provider into another and do it in with a 10 cents of a euro cost of tokens. It's just trivial to do it. So yeah, then I try to switch to Box Live, which is a different provider, and well, here's the Box Live. This is a different provider for boxing data, which it's crawlable. You need to somehow take the full HTML and do not straightforward things to extract the fights. And even then, the fights were not complete, because they had like a limitation of showing up to 20 fights at most per fighter, which was throwing partial data into our problem and divesting from any sound conclusions about the toughness of the fighters. So I tried to do that, and I found nothing. And then I found that Wikipedia was the best way to do it. We have, no, not the test, sorry. We did the Wikipedia fetcher and things like that. And then I started to do this, because in order to not to accumulate cognitive debt, working with agentic tools, it's very important to fight aggressively complexity, because the agent solves the task and go ahead and does not look backwards. But you probably need to go backwards, unlike the agent, because or the agent that doesn't care. And you need to condense this working solution into something clean. And after this, you need to do refactors and do move in. This is do most interest do to the crawler minimum. There are several things that I did here, but maybe there is several rounds of trying to condense, to simplify, to clean the code, and to make into something more manageable than what we have here. Because as you can see, this let me see where it is. I know I can get to it. When we add Wikipedia, this is ugly than it's uglier than what we have here in the Clorel wiki, which is minimal. Okay, compare this to this. Yeah, I'm not sure if you're even reading the screen or able to do it, but you can do it at first glance. That I don't want to go through it, don't want to maintain it, don't want to read it, don't want to fight to understand it, but this is fine. Okay? It's clear, even if it is collapsed. It's nothing, okay? And it's a structure, much easier. And I think it's key if we are working with agentic tools to go through these strong rounds of fighting complexity, because you need to bear complexity, and the agent doesn't care about that. Vanilla agents, okay? Now we have open cloud and things like that we can think about this extra layer, probably. Okay, yeah, and then we have some rounds of iteration, and this is a TopBox, like cleaning a little bit, extending the fighter sheet and moving away, because initially this was part of the code, but it's a huge file and a huge string that shouldn't be part of the code, but should be in a place somewhere else. This is 15 and 16, 16. I added the top decay weighting, and we can see that it makes a difference in results, just simply adding this this time decay thing, this weighting of the edges. Now that we have everything clean, if we want to evolve the code, it's very easy. You just add one extra method to the class, and you do not need to change anything else because it's properly abstracted, and it's, we have good modularization. So adding things and evolving things is not requiring to break everything before. It's just you can add modularity. You can add logic in a modular fashion if the code is properly structured, and it pays off very quickly. And after adding the 16, then go to 17, and we go to the consideration of the drawers, because there was very strong blind spot. And again, it's simple to to create this without much of a hassle, because the logic is very clear. You just need to do this addition of adding the draw share, and it's very easy to create a new logic for handling the match, and you do not need to break anything else. Okay, so well, I added, yeah, the, if everything arises from a good definition of the classes that we are using. Okay. And maybe some extra things about more static, but this is just tooling, just as side things for this is not functional, it's just for the structure of the project and where we store the files. Okay, and then what is this? Add the consolidated ranking. And once again, we do not need to break the full repo in order to add this interesting functionality, which it changed a lot of how we work, how the model works, but it's just a minor addition. We can simply add this kind of reversal of the time waiting, and we do not throw to the rubbish bin the rest of the things that we have done before, and we can keep compounding without spoiling the complexity of the code. Now, yeah, this is ugly because as I mentioned before, I also be able to deduplicate this and wrap it into a function or something like that. Yeah, and that's it. That's the current status of the boxing thing, and this is the README. And here I try to summarize very quickly, a very distilled way, these things that I walked you through in this kind of demo about this project that I wanted to dive into for a long time. This is the TopBox ranking pipeline, and this is, if you want to take a look at the repo, it's out there available. I will provide a link for that, but it's here. Adrian Matias Sandbox and things like that. I will you can find it probably very easily, and I will provide some kind of links for that repo, and for you to play around with that or whatever, or maybe yes, take a look at it. Yeah, and that's it. That's what I wanted to mention. It's just a problem that I faced, that I had in the back of my mind for a long time ago, several years, as a boxing fan, as a machine learning and data scientist practitioner, and I couldn't have the time, the knowledge, the technical capability that now suddenly revealed that it's very easy to do it. Thanks to now I have some kind of a little bit of spare time to allocate to that, but definitely it will have been months of work instead of 1 week and a half for diving into it with the use of agentic tooling, which is, well, I don't want to get into debate of this, but about artificial intelligence for software development, yes or no, what is the impact? But in the bright side of the thing is that it's just great now to go into something that you would like to do, and you are capable to do it, even if now you do not need a team of experts in that particular area, because you have the you have the Sultan that knows everything at the command of your voice, at the command of your prompts, and if you are able to work wisely with it, and you have, well, now the bottleneck is not capability or intelligence, the bottleneck is curiosity and agency, and if you have as well, it's never about the answers, it's always about the questions. So if you have the right questions in order to ask and to be able to have the vision to guide to the agents towards the place that you want to be. This have never been a better time to do it than today. I feel very sad about Golovkin doesn't make him into the rank, because, or Lomachenko, because there are some fighters that I really truly love. But well, that's just the thing of data, that you should be biased by your emotions and by your things, but maybe only by things that we could agree on, and some common principles and simple assumptions aside of, well, you can appreciate what you like, but we want to do something scientifically that we can replicate and we can justify and we can defend and understand. Is this way of Golovkin that didn't make it. The other thing is that I mentioned briefly a couple of times, but the amount of understanding that I increase about boxing by working in particular into this, aside of just ranting in the bar about who's better. It's increasing both of them, but trying to go review your assumptions and review how you approach the problem and understand the nature of the problem that you had in hand. Like, for instance, this kind of approach of considering weight class as negative information because it's not as a correct assumption to have it as a static attribute for boxers, because it's something more related to a point in time for a particular person. This is adding negative information. The way I understand it, it's not perfect, but it's removing, but it's closer to the truth, not adding, because it introduces less lies. And the other side was this kind of appreciation of the sweet science of boxing evolving across time. And it's not the, if we have a second tier boxer today, probably will be able to beat a top class world champion 40 years ago, because of nutrition advancement, the refinement of training, the deepening of the techniques, and the amount of resources and styles that we have increased with time. That is good to appreciate, and now I will have to look at boxers across time with extra perspective. And as well, the thing about the censoring of the data, which is always something very hidden in the data sets and in the data problems that we face. Is that okay? What is the likely? What is the likeliest, the probability of dying? Okay, you're only if you're only looking to people not have died before, it's maybe you have a biased data set, because some people are not yet died, or maybe people that have died are out of your data set, and it happens in a very subtle way. It's very obvious, but very difficult to manifest, and it's very easy to miss that there's some censoring of the data, these silent biases. And it happened with this, with recent fighters. Yeah, it's more difficult to achieve a victory now because the boxing sport is more difficult, but recent boxers have not faced their sunset years. They have not face their post-prime part of the careers, and there is an unfair comparison against boxers of the past who we had data for them when they start, when Mike Tyson started to lose fights, or when Julio Cesar Chavez started to not to be so disciplined. And yeah, that's not happened yet to Gervonta Davis, but it's unmaterialized data yet, and it's part of the future, and we do not know. And yeah, so I'm happy to have a working version now. I'm more or less confident and able to share without shame, and even if it is opinionated, there's no ground truth, but I think it's of value, at least for me, because I was able to understand better the boxing nature of how we compare boxers, and as well to try to coalesce some of the coding practices that I have faced in the past and try to put them all together in a compact way, especially in the light of the agentic revolution that it seems that it's never ending, and so dense so dense source of surprises every single day. I really enjoyed working on this and sharing it with you. So see you next time.